It's time to discuss all things game week 24, double game week, what players we should be owning, what teams we should be targeting over the next few weeks, my overall transfer plans for this week for game week 23, and everything you need to know about this double game week coming up, chip strategy, what we should be doing with our assistant managership, especially looking in depth into that. And as I say, looking at all the players that we need to be targeting in the next week or two and looking at the fixtures that are ideal for these players. And what should we be doing? Should we be going for triple Liverpool, of course? Should it be double Liverpool attack? Should it be double Liverpool defence? Of course, we know we all own Mo Salah. And what Everton assets should we be looking at? And what, as we say, should we be playing triple captain? Should we be using our assistant managership? We're going to be discussing everything you need to know in this video. If you're not subscribed to this channel, what are you doing? If you're an FPL fan and you're not subscribed, you really should be. Hit subscribe down below and drop a like if you enjoy as well. Be very much appreciated. And let's just get the Everton chat out the way, because not many people are talking about Everton at all, of course, because they have a double game week, of course, as well as Liverpool. But it's all the chat about Liverpool. But of course, Everton do play against Leicester and then Liverpool as well. They got Brighton this week, and then game week 25 they got Crystal Palace. Now, people aren't going to be loading up massively on the Everton assets, but I do think you probably need at least one Everton asset, potentially even two. Me personally, I do think the number one Everton asset, we've got them in kind of order here. The top is the one that I think is the most important, and then the ones at the bottom are less important that you could also go for, which could be very good. But I do prefer the one at the top. So Jordan Pickford being the number one standout option for Everton for me. He gets good saving points usually. He's been disappointing in the last few weeks, but overall he's a very, very good asset over on FPL. He got the most points last season as a goalkeeper, and this season he's still got the second highest amount of points behind only Matt Sells in the Nottingham Forest goal. So you don't have to bring him in this week, to be fair. You might already own a David Raya. You might already own you might already own Sells himself as well. You don't have to bring him in yet because Brighton away isn't the best fixture. But then for that double game week, I do think as an Everton asset, I think Pickford is the number one standout choice for me. Good chance of saving points. You'd hope he can maybe get a clean sheet in that Leicester game. And then beyond that, he's got Palace and United. Beyond that, it's not too bad run of fiction. Pickford's fine just to keep in, to be honest, beyond the double game week. That's the main reason why I think Pickford's the number one. Just looking around it, he will be able to stay in your team for longer due to the fact that he's actually a decent enough FPL option without the double game week as well. So then the second best option for me is another Everton defender in Mykolenko. Very cheap way. The reason why I put Mykolenko in second over all the other Everton defenders is that he's nailed on and he's cheap. He's only 4.3 million. He's a cheap way into that Everton defence. You could maybe go for Tarkowski, someone who's also nailed, but he might have a better goal threat from set pieces. But Mykolenko also gets forward a bit from left back as well. And as I say, he's only 4.3 million. You can maybe bring him in as your fifth defender. Upgrade maybe your 4 million defender to Mykolenko, and you've got an extra double game week player there for Everton. So I'd say at least own one double game week player for Everton, if not two, but I think one is probably enough. For the forwards, I don't think there's any good midfielders in all fairness. McNeil's out injured and he probably won't be back. Or even if he might be back, he's too risky to select anyway. Then we have the two forwards, which is Iliman Ndiaye and Calvert-Lewin. Now, it's difficult to decide between the two. I think they're both okay options. I do think there's just better forward options in my opinion than these two, but if you wanted to go for them, I think I'd probably go for Calvert-Lewin over Ndiaye. The fact that Calvert-Lewin's on penalties, I know he's only scored one in his last 16, but if you watch a game against Spurs, he did look pretty dangerous. But you've also got another week to judge Everton. They've only just appointed David Moyes, obviously. We'll see how they get on against Brighton. You don't have to bring him in this week in game week 23. So definitely on the watch list. I'd see how Calvert-Lewin and Iliman Ndiaye get on and see who performs the better, and then we'll get another week's worth of information. But right now, I would be leaning towards Calvert-Lewin, but for me, only owning one Everton asset in a double game week is fine. Jordan Pickford. If not, you can go for Mykolenko as well. You could just go for both, which is also valid. So now going on to Liverpool defenders. Which is the best to own? Who should we be selecting in our team? Now, we're going to, of course, at least have one Liverpool defender in our team, potentially two. Now, I've ranked them again. We've got the three in order. Well, we've got the one at the top and then the other three as well in the next kind of tier down. Now, the double game week for Liverpool, people are doubting Trent-Alexander-Arnold's minutes, but people don't realise, I don't think anywhere, I'm not sure if they're aware, that Liverpool actually have 2 games in between their double game week. So they play Bournemouth away at the start, and then they play Spurs in the Carabao Cup, and then they play Plymouth in the FA Cup, and then on the Tuesday night they then have Everton away. So you'd imagine that in Bournemouth Liverpool just play their strongest team. Trent-Alexander-Arnold will play. Then they'll probably play their strongest team again in the Carabao Cup because it's an important game against Spurs in the semi-final, a chance to play in the final. And then they do have Plymouth in the FA Cup on the Saturday, which you'd imagine Liverpool will definitely rotate for that game. Plymouth is a fixture that they should be winning, and you'd imagine Liverpool will play their second team, which then you would assume that Conor Bradley would come into the side for that. And then 24, you'd expect Liverpool to go full strength. It's the Merseyside derby. For me, you'd expect Trent-Alexander-Arnold to play. So for me, Trent-Alexander-Arnold is the number one Liverpool option in terms of defenders. He's got that attacking potential. He's got 2 double-digit hauls in recent weeks. And as I say, he's got real potential in that double game week to get some good scores, and you'd hope you can maybe get an attacking contribution with a clean sheet in there, and you're talking big points then. And at Ipswich at home, if you've not already got him, any Liverpool player I'd be bringing in this week, by the way. I'd be transferring them in game week 23 because you've got Ipswich at home. Pretty much the best fixture you can get realistically. So Trent for me is the number one Liverpool asset. Now, we'll talk about Alisson. I think he's a great asset, but when you take into consideration you've also got Pickford as an option as well, I think I'd rather go for Pickford than go for another Liverpool asset personally, because I think Pickford's the best Everton asset. And Alisson's a very good Liverpool asset in this double game week. And going forward, I think he's a good asset. But there's also other players for Liverpool as well. You've got more choice with Liverpool. Everton, you don't have that kind of same choice as you do with Liverpool. So for me, Pickford is a better pick than Alisson. He's not a better pick than Alisson, but he's a more sensible pick than Alisson because he's, I think, Everton's best Everton asset. So for me, I'd pick Pickford over Alisson. But if you wanted to go for Alisson, fair enough. I'd bring him in this week. If you got a Raya or someone swap straight to Alisson, absolutely valid. Virgil van Dijk, for me, I don't want to talk about Van Dijk too much just because Trent Alexander-Arnold, if you're going to have Trent Alexander-Arnold, you're not going to have Van Dijk. It's either Trent or Van Dijk for me. And for me, I'd rather go for Trent over Van Dijk. But if you wanted to go for Van Dijk and not have Trent, then fair enough. I think just going for Trent and Van Dijk is too expensive. Now, Konate is a cheap way into that Liverpool defence. He has been kind of rushed back from injury. He said in an interview that he's basically rushed himself back to play. So he did get rested in the Champions League, so I'd imagine he'll start against Ipswich. And I do think he'll start again against Bournemouth. And then he's kind of similar to Trent. I think he'll get rested in the games that are less important, but he'll play in the matches that are very important. So I think he'll play in the Carabao Cup on the Tuesday. I think he'll play against Bournemouth in 24. I think he'll get rested against Plymouth, and I think he'll come back into the starting 11 against Everton. But another question mark with Konate is just that injury record. But if you want to take the risk with him, then fair enough. If you wanted to go for two Liverpool defenders, for me, I would be choosing Trent and Konate, but that's my personal opinion. As for Liverpool attackers, now, of course, we want to be having a triple up on Liverpool for game week 23, ideally, due to the fact that they play against Ipswich. It's an amazing fixture. Now, Mo Salah, we don't even need to discuss. We already all have Mo Salah, and he's going to be people's maybe even triple captain, which we'll discuss with Mo Salah in a bit. But Mo Salah, I think, has obviously got to be in there. Now, the next tier down, we've gone for Cody Gakpo. Now, if you have a look, he's actually started every single game week for Liverpool since game week 12, and he's been consistently in the team. He got rested in the Champions League. I think he's another player that is going to keep starting. He's the one that's been in form. He hasn't scored in the last two matches, but before that he was in great form, and I'm confident that Cody Gakpo personally will be playing the game against Ipswich. And if I was to put my neck on the line and say who's the most, other than Salah, the most nailed Liverpool attacker, I think it would be Cody Gakpo. Nunez, I think, is just better from the bench, realistically. And Jota's kind of got a few injury issues right now. Not guaranteed that he'll even be able to be making these games for game week 24. He probably will do, but like in terms of starting matches, I think Gakpo is much safer than Jota. And then Luis Diaz as well is an interesting one, but he's kind of getting a bit rotated. He didn't play well against Brentford when he was up front. He played 75 minutes in the Champions League. I do think he'll start in game week 23. If you own Luis Diaz, I think he'll be fine to start the game. But I just think Cody Gakpo right now is slightly higher up in terms of Arne Slot's minutes, as proven since game week 12. And I do think he's in form as well, Cody Gakpo. So for me, Gakpo's the second choice. Luis Diaz, we have just discussed there. I think he could still be decent. If you have him, I'd hold him this week and then make your decision, because I do think he'll start against Ipswich. And I put Szoboszlai in there. People are talking about him. I mean, for me, I'm not even considering him in the slightest, to be honest. I think taking up a midfield slot as well. You've got to take into consideration that Diaz and Szoboszlai take up a midfield slot. In midfield, you've already got, obviously, Salah himself, Palmer. You've got mbuemo, you might have Gordon, you've got Morgan Rogers, Eze, and Amad Diallo. You've got so many options in midfield that are equally as good. I think in the forward slot in FPL, you've got Isak, Wood, and then you can maybe argue Mateta as the three. But then, like, it's not absolutely nailed. Everyone would say a different third forward. So Cody Gakpo for me is just an easier pick than Szoboszlai or Luis Diaz, in my opinion. So which are the three best Liverpool players to own now? You could maybe go for double Liverpool defence or double Liverpool attack. A lot of people are asking that question. Of course, it depends on your team structure. We'll talk about that later on, the kind of team structure between it. But for me, in my personal opinion, and in my team, which I'll show you in a bit, I've gone for Mo Salah, of course, is number one. Top tier, absolutely, there's no question. Then it's Trent Alexander-Arnold for me. I think Trent Alexander-Arnold is the second best Liverpool asset going into the double game week, in my personal opinion. And then, as I say, you could go for the Liverpool defender, which we'll discuss in a second. But for me, in my personal team, and just in general, I think it's an exciting option. I think Cody Gakpo is the one for me. So those are my top three Liverpool assets, in my personal opinion. So as I say, it definitely just depends on your personal team structure, because you might already have a forward that you're happy with. You might own a Wissa, you might own a cheaper forward, you might already own a Mateta who you don't want to get rid of, which is fair enough. And as I say, you might not have that third forward spot open for Cody Gakpo. For my personal team, and a lot of people, they've already owned Jackson. So going from Jackson straight across to Gakpo, I just think such an easy move, and it just makes absolute sense. It just makes perfect sense to me. But if you're happy with your forwards, then maybe going for a double up on Liverpool is also valid. And as I said before earlier in the video, I think Trent-Alexander-Arnold and Konate is the best way forward. But it also depends, are you playing your assistant managership? If you want to play your assistant managership on Arne, so you're going to have to keep 1.5 million spare. So if you wanted to go Jackson down to maybe a Wissa or maybe a cheaper forward like Raul Jimenez, that's also valid. But I think for me, I'm going to be holding my assistant manager chip personally. And if you have your triple captain, I do think this is a better week to play your triple captain over an assistant manager chip. You've got a lot of chips to play coming up, so you've got to be wary of when you're going to be using your chips, and you've got to have a genuine plan as to when you're going to be using your chip. If you've got all of your chips available, I do think playing a chip this week is probably the way to go. Either assistant manager chip or triple captain. I do think triple captain is the better option in my personal opinion. But as I say, if you don't want to bring in Cody Gakpo, you think his minutes are limited, or you've got 3 forwards that you're already happy with, I think going for another defender, maybe if you've got a Gabriel, moving a Gabriel to Konate is absolutely fair enough. So moving on to my personal team right now, I've already made an early transfer. I've got 3 free transfers still after this. I brought in Cody Gakpo for Jackson. As I said before, that is just such a simple move for my personal team. We've got 3 free transfers, and we might maybe go for Mykolenko in for maybe Jacob Greaves next week. We'll see how I'm feeling ahead of the double game. But that transfer is definitely not confirmed yet. It's not written in at all yet. We need to wait and see, and I'll definitely be talking about that next week in Game Week 24. So if you enjoyed the video, do drop a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.